Hello everyone, this is Penguin Overdrive and Steam is back at it again with another Steam Game Festival. Now, for those of you who don't know, Steam occasionally puts out these game festivals where you can play 100 or so demos. Well, the beginnings were very humble, you can only play a dozen or so games, but now that everybody knows it works very well to, advertise your game there, everyone is jumping on the train and now we got like 100 demos to go through. And so I'm going to recommend to you 10 games today in this video. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that you don't miss this, because it ends on February 9th. And yes, this also means that this video is going to be barely edited, that I'm going to mess a bunch of times and I'm not going to do a lot of multiple takes because I want to get this out as soon as possible, because as soon as possible as I can get this out, see, it already happened, but as soon as I get this out, this means that you can go and jump on these games before they disappear forever on February 9th and you have to wait for the full release to play, or maybe for another game festival. I don't know when they will be back, but you probably should pick them up right now so you can see if you enjoy any of them. So let's begin right away. Our first game of the day is Steel Assault, published by Tribute Games, and if you don't know who they are, well, they make and publish games with absolutely gorgeous pixel art, and Steel Assault is no exception. It plays really good, it feels very good to play this game, and you essentially play as a guy who is a soldier who for some reason has to kill a bunch of other people. I didn't read the story, there is barely any story in the demo, but the point is, the main gimmick of the game is that you got this sort of grappling hook rope thing that you can attach onto different objects or platforms so you can get access to new places, sort of like the grappling hook from Just Cause, but while in Just Cause you could attach it to enemies and stuff. In this case it's mostly used for movement, and you also use the attack button to kind of use it as a whip. I think it's the same weapon that he uses as a whip, and you basically go from left to right fighting enemies. Now what really impresses me is the level of detail in the pixel art and also the variety of gameplay. In here you start shooting in a boat and then you get to fight enemies while hanging off an helicopter. It's now really fun. It reminds me in a way of like a Bayonetta style Hideki Kamiya game where you change gameplay styles every moment or so, but to change things up a little bit. But the problem with this demo, and the reason I decided to start this video with this demo in particular, is that it's kind of underwhelming in length. It's only 5 minutes long, so I don't really see this convincing many people that this game is good. It barely feels like half a level, really. But for people who are already looking forward to this game like I did, like I'm still doing, I feel like this is a fair warning of them that the demo is out and that they can try it out right now, because it just confirms that the basic gameplay feels good and that it is very good and that the graphics are quality. It's basically just a small confirmation that the thing that I like is still coming out, but it is so short. I don't see many people suddenly falling in love with this game if they already didn't fall in love with the trailers and stuff. But well, that's it. So yeah, great upcoming game, a bit of an underwhelming demo. The second game on our list for today is Happy Game by Amanita Design, developers of Machinarium and a lot of other adventure games, point-and-click style adventure games. Look, I know Semrost, I think that's how it's pronounced, is really popular. It's got like 3 games, it's like a trilogy, but that's how popular it is, but I only played Machinarium, and that game was amazing enough for me to want to follow Amanita for the rest of time. Now, Happy Game, contrary to the name, or perhaps not, I don't know yet where the plot is going, perhaps it is going to turn out to be quite a happy game or a game to do with happiness, but if you were expecting like an actual happy game, well, I'm sorry, the name is very ironic. It is a horror adventure point-and-click game from the developers of Machinarium, and that is pretty much everything you should need to know to immediately jump into this game. But let's assume you don't know who Amanita Design is. Well, in Happy Game, you play as a little boy. Well, not really as a little boy. You just kind of can drag the kid around, but you sort of play as the environment. You play as a hand, a mouse that can interact with the environment, and you get to solve these puzzles, these point and click adventure puzzles, but they're not too complex. You're not like given 20 screens and a 30 slot inventory and you have to go around clicking, trying to figure out what goes where, when, in order to progress. It's more like there's bite-sized puzzles every few moments that you must solve using dream logic in order to proceed. And the further you go, the creepier it gets. It can get very creepy. But at the same time, there is a flashback in the demo to a time in which the boy was sort of awake, because he is dreaming, he's a nightmare. I'm sorry if I forgot to mention that, you're trying to get him out of a nightmare. But basically, there's a flashback to when the boy was awake, and it shows a part of his life in which he suffered from some bullying, and I think the game might touch more on the full game might touch more on that aspect of relating his nightmares to his real life, and I think that might be where the developers are going. But with a good plot or not, the plots in Amanita games, at least from what I saw in Samroast and from what I play in Machinario, tend more towards the abstract side of things. There's no dialogue, so you gotta kind of figure out what everything symbolizes if something is not immediately obvious. And that style lends itself perfectly to Happy Game, which is a very abstract horror game. And in these days where horror games can just be a lot of first-person walking simulators with spooks, it's just so good to see a game that tries something a bit new with the horror genre and delivers a new type of unsettling situation. And honestly, I'm looking quite forward to this game. I really like this demo. It is also a short demo, 15 minutes long. It's what took me to figure out all of the puzzles, but because it is divided into these bite-sized puzzles that you can see the beginning, the middle, of the end of the logical process, you can kind of know exactly what to expect when the full game comes out. And this demo really I think this demo is going to be a very good representation of what the full game is end up going to be. So, recommended. Next on our list is another horror game, but unlike the previous horror game that tried to bring something new to the genre, this one tries to go as far back as it can into the realm of classic survival horror to essentially resurrect it in a very classic style, even going with a 4:3 resolution PS1 graphics, and that game is Alisa. Developed by Casper Crows, it is kind of a Resident Evil PS1 throwback game. It has the fixed camera angles, it has the tank controls, it has the ability to aim up or down, and it is essentially very clunky to control. But on the other hand, you also get a very specific health bar that shows exactly how much health you have, and you even get a little crosshair on the HUD showcasing if you're currently aiming at an enemy or not. So it's clear the developer put some thought into it to make it like a classic survivor horror game, but at the same time bring a little bit of quality of life changes to make everything just play better, I'm trying to find the right words, but it just plays better, it just feels better. In this game, you play as, I imagine, Alisa, a woman who wakes up in a strange mansion called the Dollhouse, dressed up like a doll, pretty much. The mansion is filled with these mechanical abominations, like giant doll-dressed women with empty eyes that are probably made of metal inside, and these small, how can I describe them? Clockwork cockroach kind of enemies. It's a bit tough to describe the atmosphere of the game and the thematic. The thematic is basically dolls, but not just dolls, it's clockwork, it's old school stuff, and it's honestly a surprise that nobody tried out doing this before, playing around with this theme, especially since people have been saying that those really realistic dolls that are kind of really close to human beings but not really, and fall straight into the uncanny valley. People have been terrified of those for years, so how come nobody tried making a survival horror game based around those so far? Well, Casper has the right idea. He is the hero that we deserve. He decided to rise up and make a game that is throwback to the PS1. And also, I have no idea if this extremely specific information is relevant, but there is a hand puppet guy that hides in a wall and shows up in like a hole in the wall, and he's basically the merchant of this game. He trades the gears that you can find for items, and he's just, I don't know, I just find that hilarious. And he even sells dresses. That's right, you can equip different armor with different abilities. It's not stats, because it's not a very stat-based game, but different abilities in this game, and it takes the form of dresses. And obviously I bought the military dress because you know exactly what kind of person I am. I see a dress, I just gotta buy that, even at the cost of not buying medicine to heal and not buying ammunition, which is probably why I died shortly after. But hey, I got the dress. The entire game is very PS1, all the way down to the banner on the Steam page, which shows the character dressed pretty normally. It's the clothes she's dressed in the game. It's kind of odd clothing, but there's nothing weird about it. But she's like in this sexy pose, and this contrast is pretty much straight from the PS1 era. I just look at this and I'm like, yes, I can totally see this being the cover of a PS1 era game. And it just nails that. So if you remember PS1 survival horrors, if you like fixed cameras as much as I do, for some reason we are just doomed, but we love those damn things. I just love fixed cameras. I just think they give the developers complete control of what is shown on the screen, and that is very cool. Then just check out Alisa. If you like what you're seeing here, it's exactly what you expect, with a few quality of life changes that make it much better when you take a closer look. So yeah, recommended. Let's keep the dark thematic going by jumping over to Shady Knight, a game by Alexei Shiptin Captain and I don't know how to pronounce that. You go to the Steam store page and you can see his name or her name. I don't know. But they developed Shady Knight, and Shady Knight is a Devil May Cry style meter inspired first-person slasher platformer with a lot of parkour. And if that description doesn't get you hype, I don't know what will. The game is just great. It flows great, it feels great, it plays great. It is a lot more, at least in the demo, it is a lot more forgiving than you might expect from a DMC inspired game. But it is really good. And basically the idea is that you play as this knight who is like in this oceanscape that only has is oceans all the way to the horizon. They just stretch out infinitely, and you just are in these odd structures and you have to keep going up them. At least in the beginning, the levels are named like towers, and there's also more levels where you don't climb much called arenas, so I imagine different levels have different things. But at least in this demo, you're always going up, you're always grabbing something, and on the way you're gonna find enemies that you can kick into objects, you can kick them into spikes, you can kick them far away, and if they have a weapon and you kill them, then you can steal the weapon and you can perfect parry and you can air juggle them, and it's basically everything you'd expect from a DMC game, except in first person, and you are jumping, and there's platforming, and the game is fantastic. It's just great. It's just such a fantastic game. I just loved it. The demo only took me 15 minutes to reach the end, but once again, the levels are bite-sized and they have a beginning and a middle and an end that are placed in such a way that you can immediately understand what is going to be the rest of the game, what is going to be the style of the game. And though I think there's going to be more weapons, and I think there are going to be more enemies and maybe more parkour parts, more traps. I don't know how the full game is going to go. Oh, and by the way, if you like jump and you're diving, if you use like or if you jump from a chain and you're diving and you aim, you can actually go into slow motion to shoot, and there's just so many cool little details in this game that I can just endlessly play this demo over and over again. And the style meter isn't just like a 2D, it actually is a 3D ladder showing D, C, or B, you know, your style grade, and it sort of like spins and changes, and it flows really well. And this is just such a great demo to download because you're going to get so much out of this demo, because it is graded, you know, so you can always aim for a higher grade. You can always aim to try to do the same level but get more points. Try to do the same level without falling. Try to do the same level without taking damage. Try to do the same level while doing all at the same time if you are a true hardcore gamer. And it's just, it feels good, and I'm really looking forward to this one. And if you're into first-person parkouring types of games, or if you're just a DMC junkie like I am, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of this demo. So yeah, Shady Knight, please check it out. Our next game is dark, but it's not edgy. It is dark as in it is literally black and white, mostly black. It is Genesis Noir by Feral Cat Dan. I got a little bit worried as I started the demo because it started talking about the Big Bang and universes and infinity and stuff, and my immediate thoughts were, damn, this sounds pretentious. You know, there are themes that are interesting to explore, but sometimes you doubt if the developer is going to explore them properly. But thankfully, as soon as the actual game started, I realized that the Big Bang and all that stuff, I didn't care about that. All I cared about were the visuals and the playstyle. Genesis Noir is a point-and-click adventure game that is very abstract. You don't control a single character, you control the universe around you. You walk around and you interact with panels that change your perspective in scenes, that changes the angles of scenes, and then you start playing an impromptu jazz music with another guy, and you click on a sign that is pointed the other way, but you can point it your way when you're selecting and observing it so you can see what's on it. And it's just unusual. There are unusual controls and unusual visuals in service of, I think, what's going to be an unusual story. But quite honestly, right now, from the demo alone, I couldn't tell much about the story. The game is told with, if you interact with things, the game gives you a description, but it is mostly no dialogue, so you just kind of have to guess what is going on. And so far, the visuals are absolutely mesmerizing. I have no opinion on the story right now. I think I need to see develop it further, and I hope it doesn't go in a way that's too pretentious. I hope that the developers know the subject that they've decided to tackle, which is the entirety of the universe, apparently, which is, you know, it's a pretty big topic to tackle. But even if the story fails, I think Genesis Noir is going to deliver on visuals alone and on the unusual gameplay and the way it changes. It's going to be quite a ride, and you know what, even if it's not perfect, I look forward to it. I think it looks amazing and it sounds jazzy, so, you know, fingers crossed it turns out to be an excellent game. But at the very least, it is an excellent demo that I think you should check out. Another game that is mostly black is Loop Hero, published by the indie darlings Devolver Digital, but actually made by 4 Quarters, which is a bit of a simple name, but I kind of like it, really. Well, names aside, Loop Hero is a sort of roguelike, but not really, card game that plays by itself. It's an idle card game roguelike, but not really game that takes place after the end of the universe. It's kind of hard to explain, so I'm just going to say what the gameplay is like. Every time you start already in a loop, and then eventually you go to a campfire, a camp basically, where you can rest between loops. And the loop of the game, God, I'm saying loop a lot, is that you go outside of the campfire, outside of the camp, in an expedition, and every time you go, there is a loop. And the loop looks different every time you go there. But the loop is just a simple loop with a few slimes in there. It's a wasteland basically, and your character walks automatically and fight against the slimes automatically and kills them, and you do nothing. He just loops, you know, he just keeps going in a loop forever. However, every time you defeat the enemies, you get cards, and you can use the cards in the environment to change them. You can change a tile into a cemetery, for example, so it can start spawning skeletons. And each time you do a loop, the enemy level goes up, and you want to fight harder enemies so you can get better equipment that you can equip in your character, so you can fight automatically better, so you can get more cards, so you can build the world, and slowly but surely you're going to rebuild the broken world from the hero's memories, which he does not exactly have. It's a pretty interesting concept that it's kind of hard to explain, but once you start playing it, you can see how simple it is, but at the same time how much potential for depth there is, and it's just good. It just feels good to play it and slowly build an entire world. At the beginning, you're just going to place tiles randomly, but eventually you're going to see the tiles descriptions, and you're going to see the cards descriptions, and you're going to see cards that are like, if you place this card, it does nothing, but if you place another card of the same type near it, for every card that is next to the card you already placed. God, this game is hard to explain. For every card that is next to a card that you already placed of that type, it's going to like upgrade your max health. So you're like, oh, I need to open some space here, and there is like a lighthouse that once you place makes everything, both the hero and the enemies, act faster. And you place a spider cocoon to summon spiders, and you're like, why would I want to spawn better enemies? Because you need to fight better enemies so that you can unlock more cards, so that you can progress in the game story by looping again and again and again and again. And if you die, well, I didn't die, but I'm just going to assume you go back to the camp like a roguelike and you lose everything, because you can retreat at any moment, but if you retreat close to camp, you don't lose your items, and if you retreat far away from it, you lose your items, and you kind of want to keep your items because the items you collect serve to upgrade the camp and make the camp stronger so that your character can be stronger and he can go into stronger loops, and it's basically one giant loop. It just loops into loops into loops into loops. Kind of hard to explain, but it looks great. It looks fantastic. Even the Atari-like character and enemy bumping through the map looks great. The character portraits looks great. The game sounds great. The game plays great, in a manner of speaking, since it's most about planning and not actually playing. You don't play as the character. But it is a very interesting game. I really enjoy it. It is a very unique one. I love games that are hard to define, you know. And while it is hell to explain why you should play this demo right now in this video, just give it a try. It's free and it doesn't take long for you to figure out if you're going to enjoy it or not. I personally enjoy it. I'm looking forward for Loop Hero. Next up is TASOMACHI, Behind the Twilight. And boy, have I been waiting for this for a long time. Developed by Orbital Express, ever since I saw the trailers and the screenshots, it just screams at me that this game was made with an aesthetic that I like. It just feels like a game that was made for me. You know, I had no idea how it played exactly. It looked kind of like, could be an RPG, could be a bit of just a walk and talk game, but it didn't matter because the aesthetic is just top tier. I love video games, but a lot of the time they just put you into forests and trees and plains and deserts and outside places because they can just repeat the same asset again and again and again. And when you're developing a high fidelity video game, that is simply easier to do. So I always enjoy games that put you in an urban environment, but not just an urban environment, but a pretty one, one that makes you feel like you want to explore, a different one. And TASOMACHI fits the bills perfectly. It really looks, the concept art at least gives the impression that the developer might have been inspired by one of my favorite scenery artists ever, Imperial Boy, who is just draws amazingly good environments. And while the environments in TASOMACHI, the actual 3D ones, aren't as elaborate or as pretty, because, you know, it was developed by like one or two people, but, you know, I just love it, you know, that they're trying to bring this city, this different environmental city that is just my thing, into life in a video game. It's just a dream come true to me, and that's why I've been following it for a long time. But if you're seeing right now, the demo is a bit of a weird thing because it starts on a temple that has none of the characteristics of this city that I want to explore. And immediately I discovered that the game is actually a classic style platformer, 3D platformer like Mario 64 and stuff, and I definitely didn't expect that. The game itself needs some polish. The camera is too close to the character, so for me to actually properly process where she is jumping. And the shadow that they usually place underneath characters in 3D platformers, so you know exactly where they're going to fall in a 3D space to make it easier for you to traverse in a 3D space, also is not present here, and it feels a bit floaty. It doesn't feel like I'm falling exactly what I want to, but it could be just the lack of a shadow. So yeah, the game is definitely unpolished, and the tempo bit is weird, but eventually you do get to reach a port that is like a part of the city, and it's just amazing. And it just looks beautiful, and I just want to explore it forever. And if that is just a little bit of the city that we are going to explore, it's just going to be amazing. Or like if it's a little city in an island of other cities with the temples around, it's just going to be amazing exploring the city. Now, there is a bit of a problem with this demo, and it is that after a while, it just ends. It kind of just ends. It just ends with like it has an invisible timer for it to end, and it just ends and it's like, thank you for playing. Which, for a game that has beautiful environments that invite you to slowly explore and take in the atmosphere, is absolutely sadistic. What the hell? Holy cow, this was absolutely sadistic of the developer. It just incentivizes me to like get a little taste and want more of it, which I hope will be delivered, but by 2021 spring, according to the store page. But, you know, at the same time, I kind of wanted to just be able to explore. Just give me a place that is like, end the demo when you go here and let me properly explore this environment you created. I just want to, which showcases just how strong the game is. The problem is the beginning part of the temple, which is simply not as exciting as the city, for me at least. And I don't know how they're going to balance this out in the full game, because the temple is just very boring and repetitive compared to the city. It just is very boring, I'm sorry. But hopefully the game delivers, because I've been waiting for this game ever since I discovered its existence, and the city environments are just a dream come true for me. And I hope you give this a try and that you enjoy this as much as I did, and that you get mad that it ends really shortly as much as I did. But that's TASOMACHI, Behind the Twilight. Our next demo in the list is Too Good for School, the irresponsible schoolgirl simulator. Yes, you heard that right. The name on the executable is even Project ISS. So you know they named it Irresponsible Schoolgirl Simulator and then figured out they probably didn't want to associate themselves with all of the stupid simulators out there, nor with the realistic ones. So they went with Too Good for School, which you know is a pretty good title. It's being developed by Chinese indie studio developer OTK Games, the same guys who did The Vagrant, which also looks amazing and I own and I never played, but I totally definitely should play right now because it just looks really, really good. It doesn't look as good as Vanillaware. It reminds me of Vanillaware stuff, kind of like Earth's Down. I think that was the name of the other game that also took inspiration from Vanillaware, and I'm always down for Vanillaware. It's not as good as Vanillaware, of course, because Vanillaware is a full studio, while OTK is two guys, but it still looks fantastic, and I love it. Now, the first thing you need to know is that this is a bit of a wild card to get placed in this list, because it is in very early alpha. Unlike, let's say, the first game we covered today, the first demo, Steel Assault, which is very short but very polished. This one is short, longer than Steel Assault, of course, but not very polished at all. The menus are all available with a bunch of broken options that are clearly placeholders for when the game is going to be full released. The attacks have no sound effects, sorry, not special effects. They are very well drawn and have a lot of special effects, but they have no sound effects. The entire thing feels a bit empty, and yet underneath everything is an amazing beat 'em up with the usual weak attack, strong attack, different weapons, equipments, combos. You can combo weak attacks into heavy attacks, you can aerial juggle, you can do all of the fun stuff that you want to see in a beat 'em up. And the basis is here, you know, the skeleton for a good game is here. All it's left is the polish. You know, when you got the basics right and they play this fun, you know that they got something truly special in their minds, so in their hands, sorry. But, you know, I'm just passing this out so that you can try it out by yourself. Just don't go with high expectations of polish. This is pure heart, no polish. But, you know, that is sometimes all you need in a game is heart, really. Or is it? I don't know, I just know that Too Good for School plays really fun, and more than just the demo, it looks like you're going to be able to learn new moves and take on quests and actually do irresponsible schoolgirl things like dating other boys and even other girls. The nerve of the devs, I'm sure they're very brave to go in this topic in freaking 2021. But really, what's really interesting about this and what this really reminds me is of the River City series, known in Japan as the Kunio-kun series. You know, this looks like a female version of that. This looks like a Sukeban simulator, and I just love Sukebans. They just don't appear as often. And I know what you're thinking, wait, what about River City Girls? That doesn't count. That is so freaking American, it doesn't count. This one looks way closer to what I expect a Sukeban simulator to look like and play like. And you know, this just looks like a Kunio-kun with females by the way of Vanillaware, and that's just amazing. This alpha is already very solid, but the promise of what OTK will plan to deliver with the full game just gets me fully excited. I'm down for this, I'm 100% down for this, I just absolutely love. And this is why I just couldn't skip the character, from the character design, to the world design, to the skills, to the ideas in this game. Right now they're very rough, but they just show amazing potential of being the kind of game that I'd play. There isn't many delinquent games out there. There's only one translated Kenkabancho game. I don't know how many other games are there. I think there is the Friends of... I forgot the name of that game, but it was a really good game that I also played. But there is simply not enough, because there's simply not enough media with Japanese delinquents. Though in this case it's more like Chinese delinquents, I guess. Well, whatever, the point is, Too Good for School is rough, but I deeply recommend this as a hidden gem in the middle of all of these demos, and you should definitely check it out. That is not the only Chinese developed beat-em up that we are going to be talking about today. Yes, I'm also going to be talking about the demo for ANNO Mutationem. I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, hopefully. ANNO Mutationem? I don't know, but it's another Chinese developed game by indie studio Thinking Stars. Only this time it is a cyberpunk futuristic beat 'em up with RPG elements. So you know what? I'm down. This is a very good looking game. Just like the previous game, this is a very good looking game. But this demo has a really big level of polish. I missed. This already had a demo in the previous festival, but I missed it, and I'm glad it returned this time so I could finally play through it. And this one is a bit meatier. We are getting to the meatier demos because it took me 30 minutes to play through it, and you know, that's a good size for a demo, I think. But most of it is not spent on the beat 'em up. You get to play through a beat 'em up prologue and then a little bit more of beating 'em up later on, close to the end of the demo, but most of it is just exploring, taking in the story and taking in the environment. And given that the game has shades of hacking and investigating in it, it makes perfect sense that you wouldn't just be beating up people the whole time. But basically the plot is that you play as this woman who has a cutesy hacker friend, because of course every cyberpunk Japanese anime, actually, since it's a Chinese style story, needs the cutie hacker. And she's basically has a disease, because apparently there was an outbreak of a disease in the past, and she's trying to get herself fixed from the disease using mechanical parts. What's the name? Cybernetic enhancements. Yes, that's a better name for that. And basically that's her main deal, but the main game plot seems to be following her brother, who she's searching for because he seems to have gotten on the bad side of a sinister organization that has a lot of guns and a lot of explosives. And now it's up for her to find her brother, save her brother with the help of her friend through this cyberpunk world. And this just looks amazing, this just looks fantastic. This looks like what I expect Cyberpunk 2077 to look like. Now, Cyberpunk 2077, like I said, looked very good. It has a very good art direction, but ANNO Mutationem, it simply looks better. It looks more well composed because it is more limited, and what is framed, it's the developers have this big control of what is framed in comparison to first person, and that's why I think I just love the style of this game. Sorry for stuttering so much, it's just, I like this game, and it looks very good, and it plays very good. It plays with the usual, you attack, and you can air juggle, and you can also shoot a gun. It is kind of basic, and the demo didn't give me a lot of time with the combat, it just gave me a lot of time with the visuals, and the visuals look absolutely amazing. And there is dialogue everywhere. I didn't hear a lot of dialogue that make reference to the game's lore. It's mostly just people talking about stuff people talk even in modern life, but the environments look good, and the story sounds promising. It's barely ever even started, but on style alone, I want to play more of this game. The fact that the gameplay doesn't show anything too different, but that it is very solid and that it plays very well just helps elevate this game. So yeah, check this out if you want to. I don't have a lot to say about it. If you like the visuals you're seeing on the screen right now, then that's the demo, basically. Go check it out if that interests you. And the next demo on our list is Echo Generation by Coco Cucumber, a developer who I think is Canadian. This is another game that I missed on a previous festival, and that I'm so glad that the demo returned so I could check it out, because I saw the trailer and I just immediately fell in love with it. It is basically a voxel-based game that is Earthbound by the way of Mario and Luigi. It is a turn-based RPG where you play as a young teenager, I think. Well, he's kind of a child, but he has an even younger sister, so he's kind of a teen, I guess, and the young sister is the child, and they also have a talking cat, because you see, in this world, animals can talk, and everything can talk, and it is Earthbound inspired, so things are wacky, but it's closer to a Stranger Things, a Gravity Falls kind of experience with aliens and conspiracies, and you basically fight raccoons and giant rat wolves in turn-based combat, in which you have to time your attacks or complete a certain sequence. So it reminds me a bit of Mario and Luigi, but really the way some of the attacks go reminds me more of Paper Mario, in that real time but you have to press things, because Mario and Luigi tends towards more of a simpler style of game. But, if you play those games, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, well, then you should go play them, because they're good games. Echo Generation as a whole is a very fun experience, and it's really fun to just look at some posters in the wall and note down the numbers, and it turns out you can open a safe with those numbers and get a lot of cash, and it's pretty good. The boss battles are good. The way every time you level up, you get to choose one of 4 different stats to level up, give you some incentive to specialize characters in different areas. It's all basic, but in a kind of easy to understand, hard to master way. But we'll see just how deep the skills and equipment and stuff actually go. The things in the demo were fun but basic, and I don't know if they can carry a whole game. Then again, it will depend on the game. It will depend if it's like a 10-hour game or a 20-hour game. This is definitely one of the biggest demos. You can easily spend like an hour with it. I spent an hour with it, just looking around stuff and talking to the different characters, interacting with them. And if I have a worry about Echo Generation, looks good, it plays good, is everything good, okay? The only thing that I worry about is the story, because animals talk and everybody kind of like acts like that's normal, and everyone is wacky in one way or another, and the entire experience reeks of wackiness, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario are wacky, but the problem is that the game has this sort of dark underbelly in it. There are jokes about corpses and blood trails, even though the characters are children, so it's definitely a bit more R-rated than Earthbound, but at the same time, this sort of darkness and conspiracy stuff only works if you're willing to make your game a little bit serious, a little bit grounded, if you're willing to make some rules and tell us upfront what those rules are as you start to subvert them as we go underground and we start to understand more about the world. But the world is just so wacky. The animals talking, if the animals didn't talk, that'd already be good. Thing, you know, if one animal talked and the characters went, oh, you can talk, but every enemy from raccoons to the family cat talks, and everybody just acts like this is completely normal, and everyone is neurotic in one way or another, and there's also a dog that talks, and you have to solve a puzzle by distracting him so you can steal a traffic cone, because the dog is really into street safety regulations, and that's fine and dandy. But at the same time, you place it on the normal suburbs and you don't give us a frame of reference for what is normal and not what is not normal in this world. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like a game that is going to pull a twist like, oh, this was out the kids' imagination, so of course they're okay with everything talking. And that's really my fear, really, that the story is going to be bad because we don't have a grounded point, a point for us to ground ourselves into, so that when things start getting weird, we can start feeling threatened, you know. Instead, there are just dark vibes, but the dark vibes aren't that different from the weird vibes of the entire rest of the game. And this isn't like Helix, you know, it isn't a very abstract game. It is, like I said, it has a very grounded in the suburbs kind of feel. So, I don't know, I'm afraid that the story is going to be too wacky to take seriously, and that might take from some of the creepiness of the game. We'll have to see. Other than that, excellent demo, very meaty, an hour long if you would try to explore everything it has to offer. Very good. Don't be a dumbass like me and miss this one. Definitely give this one a try. And now we reach the final recommendation, and believe me, I saved the best for last. This one is called Potion Craft Alchemist Simulator, made by Nice Play Games. And this one is less of a demo and more like an early access version of a game. There is no limit, it isn't short, you can play it for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, however many hours you want to spend in this. There is not enough content to sustain a long playthrough, but I played it for an hour and I met no block. I didn't meet any point, any character that said, oh yeah, this is the end of the demo. It just kept going. So yeah, you can just keep playing this for as long as you want, and you probably want to spend some time with this. I only spent 1 hour because I want to play a lot of things. It's basically a crime that they don't let you play more of this, because this game is just such an excellent idea and such an excellent aesthetic. It basically looks like a medieval, it's not a painting, but like those medieval drawings with those lines that got thinner in order to showcase shadow and texture. It's a cool art style that doesn't demand too much from the creators, so they can still create a lot of assets and variety in the assets, and I think that is going to be this game's strength. But the thing that I enjoyed the most of it is the way you make the potions, because in this game you play as an alchemist. You find a house that you think belonged to a wizard, a magician of some sort, but it has long since abandoned, and it's on the outskirts of town, so you're like, oh okay, this is my house now, I guess. And it is a pretty nice house too. It comes with a garden where all sorts of plants and such that can be used as ingredient for potions grow, and you can mix them up into potions so that you can sell to people. Now the process of mixing up potions is very interesting. Video games always have a challenge when it comes to crafting systems. A lot of the time crafting just means get these items to make this item, and that is the most straightforward way of doing crafting. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing interesting about it, you know. But in this case, you get this sort of 2D map, this two-dimensional plane that you get to explore. That is how you make the potions. I'll try to explain as best as I can. Basically, you got this map on the back of your workshop, and every ingredient you add brings you to a different place in the map. It can go to the right, to the left, up, down. It can make all sorts of curves as it goes along. Basically, each ingredient that you put is sort of like a dice that you roll in a board game. No, that's not a good analogy, but basically you move through this map using your ingredients. You can also mash them so that you can sort of make them more potent. You can dissolve them easier, which makes them go twice their normal length in the map. It makes them, or if you don't want to go that far, you just throw the normal ingredient in there. And you have to get close to the potion icons, because when you reach a potion icon, you made a potion. You basically use the blower, is that the name of the thing? God, the game just said it, but I forgot. But you basically use that to heat up the potion, and then you make a potion. And the closer you get to the icon, the stronger the potion is. If you sort of hit the icon, it's just a weak potion. If you get really close, it's a normal potion. And if you hit the icon exactly, you make a strong version of the potion. The thing is, because of the ingredients and the way they wobble their paths all along the board, it's really hard to get it exactly where I want. And you have to explore the board, you don't know exactly where each potion is, and when you get close to a potion icon, you don't know what it's going to do until you make your first potion. So it encourages experimentation so that you can move around and create different potions and figure out different recipes, because you can use different ingredients to make the same potion. And at the beginning, I thought, wow, this is really cool, this is a really cool way of doing crafting, this is really different, and allow the player to explore on their own while they make the things that the game is about. But then it hit me that is even deeper than I thought, because you can know your recipes that work, your potions that you made, down on your recipe book, so that you can do them again when someone comes to buy a potion. They just show up and it's like, hey, can you give me a potion of healing? And you can just immediately make without needing to mix the potion by just opening the recipe book. But then I discovered that a potion that I just made, I couldn't do anymore because I used rare ingredients on it, because I was just experimenting on the board. But then, now that I know where the potion is, I can use cheaper, more common ingredients to make the same potion, and then I could actually make the potion with the ingredients that I didn't have at the moment. And it will also be easier for me if someone else asked to make the potion, because I will need rare ingredients to do it. And at that moment, my mind just blew open all the possibilities and depth of the game, because of you basically have an almost infinite amount of paths in order to make each potion, and that's just amazing in my mind. And that's not even coming the way customers come in and they haggle with you and you try to get up the price, because when you make the potions, you don't want necessarily to make the best potions, because the best potions are going to use more ingredients or very specific ingredients, since you need to reach a very specific potion icon, and not everybody is going to simply pay because the potion is better quality. They usually will, you have to look at their faces, they're going to smile and such, and they'll also say very obvious stuff like, I'll pay for this potion, but not much because it's a weak potion, and some will outright say, I would pay more for a stronger potion. But some of the time people will comment, they want just a normal weak potion to deal with a small problem. So just because you made a stronger potion doesn't mean that they're going to pay more, because they don't need the effects of the stronger potion. So you want to keep on your recipe book weaker versions of the potion and stronger versions of the potion in order to meet the requirements of different clients and to get more money out of the potion. But if you just use rare ingredients and create the most expensive, strongest versions of the potion, you can easily find yourself, well, not bankrupt, but you're going to find yourself wasting a lot of time with clients that aren't willing to pay more for your potions. And that's just it. It's great, the amount of depth that this thing has. It's amazing. And then you get into haggling, and then you can get into upgrading your skills, and then the demo is already very deep, but then you end it. And when you leave, the developers are like, oh, and we're going to add schedules, and we're going to add even more complex mechanics. We're going to add more tools for you to make more complex potions. We're going to add teleportation crystals that allow you to go to different parts of the board. And the potential is amazing. It's gigantic. This is easily one of the best games in this. And if you like this sort of menu-based management kind of game, you definitely shouldn't miss this. This is amazing. It's just great. Potion craft is amazing, and you shouldn't miss it. I just said that. Okay, let's wrap things up, shall we? And these are all of the demos that I recommend. Now, for the interest of clarity, I did not play all of the demos, so I could pick the best ones. That's insane. There are simply too many demos. Steam is absolutely ridiculous by putting so many demos in such a limited time. This needed 2 weeks, maybe more, for us to fully flesh out everything. But, I did my best. I played more than what I showed in this video. Some of the other demos were bad, some were uninteresting, Some already have a game available that is better than them, and I have no idea why anyone would want to play them instead of just waiting for the full release, since there's already a game that fills that niche nicely. But, I bet there are other hidden gems out there, and this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to Steam, find games that I haven't, and play the games that I recommended, of course, if you want to, but also find games that I didn't and recommend to me before February 9th, if you can, because holy shit, there's just too much to sift through. If you find another hidden gem, please post it in the comments. This is not even like asking you to interact with this channel, like, oh, hey, what's your opinion? I like that opinion when you post opinions, and I will respond to them, but I'm just genuinely want more hints because there's just too much shit to go through. Steam, why? Why the fuck are you like this? What